This week on Dance of Joy, we talk about traumatic junior high square dancing, old-timey seltzer spray bottles, and revisionist ice cream history. All that and more as we watch Season 6, Episode 21 of our favorite 80s hit sitcom, Perfect Strangers. Hello and welcome to Dance of Joy, a Perfect Strangers rewatch podcast. My name is Sophia. I'm one of your hosts, and joining me as always is your other host and my brother. What's up, Imran?
Hello, listener. Hi, sister. How's it going?
It's going well. What's good with you?
I was wondering recently, how is your stand-up career going there?
It's lots of fun.
Well, I didn't know if you needed help getting gigs, but I wanted to be a helpful brother. So let me tell you what I did. I went ahead. I booked you on about 17 showcases.
What?
There's 6 Zoom webinars.
What?
And you're going to open for a puppet show. But wait, here's the best part. They're all on the same day. So it should be easy fixing that schedule.
Do they pay?
Absolutely not. I'm trying to be helpful.
Listen, I see what you're trying to do with this intro, but real talk, that would be awesome if you could get me all those gigs.
That wouldn't be too much for one day.
Sounds good.
Nowadays, we're better at multitasking and doing the hustle, people.
It's all about hustle culture.
But back in the 90s and the 80s, not so much.
Not so much.
It was a stretch, as we will see in this week's episode of Perfect Strangers. We are at Season 6, Episode 21, titled A Catered Affair.
A Catered Affair.
Ooh, it's catered.
The title here comes from, I actually think it's just a saying that's like an affair that's an event that's catered,
yeah,
a catered affair.
A catered affair. It's going to be a catered affair.
A catered affair.
Like something you would say.
But it also became a television drama that was in like, I don't know, I'm assuming the 40s or 50s. And then later it was adapted into a movie in 1956. The TV drama was called A Catered Affair, and then the 1956 movie was The Catered Affair.
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it.
It actually is probably a classic 50s movie. Betty Davis, Ernest Borgnine, Debbie Reynolds, big names. So this was probably a big movie for if you're like into old-timey movies.
Borgnine.
Yeah, Borgnine himself is in it.
Whoa.
Borgnine and Borg 10 was in there as well. But I've never heard of this movie. Maybe we should check it out. But anyways, it's just a saying. It's like people have a catered affair. And if you open up the TV guide, back then, this is what you would have read. Balky's catering business begins taking off. But thanks to Larry, 3 jobs in one night may be too much.
What? Balky has a catering business?
And you were just going to take like 20 jobs in one night and you had no problem with it.
Balky's not up for the challenge, but I could do 17 shows in a night. That would be a fun challenge, actually.
Yeah.
Okay, so in this episode, we have a lot of people. We have Bronson Pinchot, Marklyn Baker as Balky and Larry. We also have the girlfriends, played by Melanie Wilson and Rebecca Arthur. And then we have a handful of guest casts, which are very fun characters, and we'll talk about them when we get there.
Yeah, a lot of fun guest casts. Guest casts. This episode airing first March 22nd, 1991. And you can watch all of these with us on Amazon Freevee. Go ahead on there, binge all 8 seasons.
Binge them. You will find your joy again, especially in the early seasons. But we are in Season 6, and Act 1 of this episode starts in our favorite cousin's apartment. Balky is in the kitchen, but like, what's going on here?
He's dressed up as a cowboy.
Like stereotypical.
He's got a cowboy shirt with long white
costume shop
frittles.
Cowboy.
Yes, jeans, a cowboy hat, and he's stirring a big pot and singing.
And he's singing in a Texas accent. He's singing some like cowboy anthem kind of song.
Yeah, I think he's just making this up.
It's like about being an old cowhand from Mepos land.
And then you see him like walk to the back of the kitchen and he's all bow-legged. Like
he does like the horse.
Yeah, like he's been on a horse, which is kind of funny. And Larry runs out and he's like, Balky, Jennifer and I are going to go to a movie. But then suddenly something stops him. The scent in the air, and he does his little mousy
sniff in the air. I can't even do it. And he goes, wait a minute, what's that smell? And Balky is still talking like in this overdrawn Texas accent. He's like, I'm glad you asked. And he takes a ladle of like chili from the pot and hands it, to like let Larry have a taste. And he goes, that's my rootin' tootin' highfalutin Texas chili. Yeehaw. And he says he goes on. I'm not going to keep going in that accent, but he says he's making it for a Western barbecue that he's catering for Saturday night at Gorman's Banquet Hall.
And then he's got he's got a long ladle and he spins it around like a gun and points it and shoots and he goes ding and he looks at the bullet. And Larry's like, good for you. They're going to enjoy the chili. When is this catering business? When did this?
We'll find out.
When was this established?
Apparently, Balky has a catering business that he does in his free time after working at the newspaper and going to school.
This has been going on this whole time. This is crazy. Also, the bowl he gives Larry, like the spoon has a little tassel on it.
Yeah, Meposian tassel.
Spoon.
Yeah. Larry tastes the chili, and at first he's like, and then like a beat later. Presumably some very spicy peppers hit him. And he's like, ha, 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 ha. And he's freaking out. And then Balky runs to the sink and he comes back with, those old timey like seltzer water things that used to be in cartoons and like Three Stooges kind of thing.
I don't even know how. Yeah, a lot of Three Stooges.
It's like a bottle, but it sprays out at like a 90-degree angle.
Yes, almost like a fire extinguisher, but it's just water.
It's just water. So Balky happens to have one of those, and it's very funny. It's full, and Larry's like, ha, 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 and his mouth's open. So like Balky runs, gets the seltzer sprayer bottle thing, and sprays it like carnival game style.
Yeah, it's like a clown when you play that clown game with the balloon
at Larry's mouth.
Getting him all wet.
But it goes all over. He's dressed up in a nice shirt and tie, and he gets him all soaked, his whole torso soaked, and the audience goes nuts. And funny thing is, I was watching this with our mother.
Yeah,
I think it was last night.
Yeah.
And she started cracking up so hard. And the reason we're so tickled by this, listeners, is because she's not a woman who laughs a lot.
Right.
But so when she does, you really notice it. And she was cracking up at this. It was very, like cartoonish and comical.
And the reason is, this is your basic slapstick comedy.
Is it in TV tropes?
That translates. I don't know if it is, but like you mentioned Three Stooges, and it's exactly like some cartoony Three Stooges we've seen. But it's something visually that is never not going to be funny. It's always funny.
But when you stop to think about it, like, what is even that thing?
Yes,
like,
my question was, who has these seltzer bottles?
What are these bottles? What are they used for?
Did everybody have these bottles back then?
What are they used for? Drinks? I mean, is it part of his catering supplies? But like, what is it used for? Yeah, to make soda drinks like a bartender does.
Yeah, like you would do in an old soda shop.
But he's not bartending, he's catering.
It could be part of the catering
He's making
business,
chili.
which just came out of nowhere.
Or is it just something that people kept around in their kitchen,
That's
like
what
dish
I
soap?
I was like, who has these spritzer bottles? What is this?
What is it? What a seltzer bottle?
Apparently they were very popular back then. Everybody had one. It's an old-timey thing. So he gets sprayed with them all over, and then he just goes, nice shot. It's kind of funny.
But yeah, it's like carnival game style.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's so funny. It comes out of nowhere. Anyways, and he doesn't seem too upset about it, Larry. He's just dries off. He's like, oh, whatever.
I'm wet.
And he asks Balky who he's cooking for. And then Balky continues in his Texas accent.
Gosh, it's so,
he goes, I heard the Texans have moseyed on up here to Chicago. I was like, oh boy, okay. They're having a big party Saturday night at Gorman's Banquet Hall. And he continues talking in his Texas accent. And Larry just standing there goes, I never thought I would ever ask you this, but can you talk the way you usually do?
And then Balky in that Texan accent goes, well, of course I can. Don't be ridiculous.
Oh, my God. Like, it's funny, but it did get a little grating by the end of it.
It was a little grating. I was like,
oh my God. Okay, you got to stop.
And Larry's like, Balky. And then he goes, okay.
Just like Larry, we were like, can we stop with this? And then Balky goes, he said it's just kind of fun talking in my Texas drawl.
Texan drawl. Instead of Texas
drawl. And Larry goes, Balky, your catering business has really taken off.
What? Catering business?
Apparently he's had 5 jobs in 5 weeks. Oh my God.
So pretty new, but in the last 5 weeks.
When has this business been established? And Balky goes, I could have had 6, but he has overtime at the newspaper and he doesn't want to do 2 jobs.
Okay, so here we've established.
This is important to establish.
This, first of all, the writers just made up a backstory that has been unfolding in the downtime that we as viewers
It's
never
great.
knew about.
By the way, this whole time Belky's at a catering.
Yeah. And
But you could
he
get
doesn't
away
even
with this.
mention that he's also in school.
Because you could get away with this.
And we're also establishing that, like, yeah, he's taking it on as a side project, but he doesn't want to stress himself out too much because he's got a lot of responsibilities, doing extra shifts at the
He's
newspaper,
doing
etc.
overtime at the newspaper.
So that's what we're getting at. And Larry hears this and thinks Balky's a little ridiculous. Larry's like a little ahead of his time because he's thinking of hustle culture, right?
Yeah.
He's like, no, like, why not? Why don't you want, if you want your business, he starts Larry explaining, if you want your business to succeed, you've got to grow. And this is a funny little exchange. Balky goes, well, most of me stopped growing when I was 16, although I don't think my nose got the message. A little self-deprecation.
Yeah, he looks down, crosses his eyes, looks down at his nose.
And then Larry's like, no, Balky, I'm talking about expansion. And Balky's like, okay, maybe I've let my belt out a couple of notches. No reason to get personal, shorty.
Oh, he calls him shorty. It's so funny. We got completely literal Balky here.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Larry, of course, clarifies that he's like, if you want your business to succeed, your catering business, you have to take more jobs. And Balky's like, no, he's being really conservative. He's like, I'm just starting out. I want to go slow.
See, that's smart. Okay.
Very smart.
That's smart. When you start entrepreneurship, I don't know nothing about it.
Nothing.
Imagine
We don't.
when you start a business.
The only thing we've
you wanna go
entrepreneured
slow.
is this podcast.
Yeah, this is
I think
about-
it's going
This is
decently
about
well.
as good
but-
as it's gonna get. Don't have that in me. This entrepreneur streak. I don't know how these people on Shark Tank, and then you watch Shark Tank, and you're like, "That's it? You're selling like a paperclip bent the other way,
Or like
this is a whole
socks.
thing." Yeah, I'm like, really? Why couldn't I come up with something? No.
We can totally come up with something, you and me.
The products that get deals on
I
that
know.
show, I'm like, wait, we should be able to come up with one of these dumb things.
Yeah.
Anyways, you want to start out slow. I think Mr. Wonderful would
Let's make
agree.
some socks.
Okay. No, Bamba is already huge. It's too late.
Okay.
But Larry says you got to seize the opportunity when it presents itself. And then he starts to go on. If I may use an example from my own life.
And Balky goes, I'll put on some coffee.
Oh, boy, we know what we're getting into. This is kind of funny because Larry's like, no, look, it's short. And then Bunky's like, is it shorter than your Bunky McDermott story?
Yay,
Which
another
is great.
Bunky McDermott reference.
We met him. Did we meet him
Yeah.
earlier this season?
Yeah.
He was so rude and made fun of him publicly, humiliated Larry.
Yep.
And Larry stood up to him.
Oh, yeah, when they pranked him.
Oh, yeah, I don't know why he's
so
telling
mean.
a story. And this
What
guy's
a
mean.
bully.
But Larry goes, no, it's shorter than my Bunky McDermott story. And Larry's like, probably a little longer than your Grandmama Appleton story. But Larry's like, yes, it's a little longer than my Grandmama Appleton story. And then Bunky's like, okay, it's approximately between the Bunky McDermott story and my Grandmama Appleton narrative. And he's like, okay. And Larry goes, okay, Bunky, if you'd let me tell the story, I'd be done by now. And Becky's like, okay, go on, tell the story. Who's stopping you?
And even then, Larry goes, okay, when I was 8, and Balky's like, should I sit down for this?
That's kind of funny, too. He's going to get into his story when he was 8. Okay, what happened when he was 8?
When Larry was 8, he and a friend had a little lemonade stand. And the friend wanted to expand and sell ice cream cones. And Larry, 8-year-old Larry, said, no, let's take it slow. We're not ready. And so the friend was like, peace out, Larry, and went off to sell ice cream cones. And then Larry says, and if I had listened to him today, it would have been Baskin Appleton's 31 flavors. And this is great because Balky's like, oh, that explains why regret eats up so much of your day.
That's a big one. So this is really funny because, like, I just imagine Larry is friends with Baskin, right? Robbins never became a thing. But this, if you think about the story, it's presuming Baskin and Robbins was like founded around
in Larry's lifetime,
like what?
Between 8 years old and 1991,
like probably a couple years ago in the timeline of the show,
right?
And maybe it was in that universe. But in reality, if you do the math, Baskin-Robbins founded in 1945 by Burt Baskin and Irv Robbins.
Burt Baskin was not 8 years old at the same time as Larry.
He wasn't. Maybe. Well, he never told us how old his buddy was. He said he was 8. Maybe he was hanging out with an adult.
Maybe
he was hanging out with an older
then.
Burt Baskins.
Maybe that happened back then.
And Burt was going to change the name and kick out Irv Robbins completely.
Right.
But in an alternate Perfect Strangers universe, this is what happened to that. You know, if it was today, you could have done Ben and Larry's
Ben
joke.
and Larry's is
That would've been a good
perfect.
one.
Yeah, so
Like,
good. It would have been
called
Ben and Larry's.
And it rhymes with Jerry. It would have been so good.
But Ben and Jerry's was
wasn't
founded
around?
when?
Oh, that's a good question. Hold on.
Ben and Jerry's wasn't. It might have been in
Yeah, like
existence,
Starbucks
but it
has been around
wasn't.
since like the 70s.
It wasn't known. I don't remember it from that time.
Okay, founded in 1978.
Okay, so it was around, but like barely. It wasn't a
It
big.
doesn't get huge until like when? Like the late 90s?
Yeah, kind of like Starbucks, right? Yeah, Starbucks was
Starbucks was in the
around for a
70s
while,
for a
but
long
we
time,
didn't. It
just
didn't really
regionally.
explode
Yeah,
till a certain point. It wasn't as much of a household name then. It wasn't as popular. Baskin Robbins, however, was everywhere.
Yeah, I don't know. But that's the rise of like the smaller food producers kind of trend that was later.
Yeah.
So they could have done it, but nobody would have got it, like you said.
Yeah,
Baskin
but
Robbins
also the Baskin Robbins, like real story math doesn't work out.
Baskin
but the
Appleton.
Perfect Strangers universe math is
all right. So anyways,
different. So
Balky returns to this kind of annoying Texas accent because he's headed out the door. He's like, I got to hightail it down to the general store, rustle up some fixins for my Posey and Western grub. And then he starts walking and he stops and he reverts back to the Maposian accent. He goes, we use real grubs, you know. And then what does he do?
he heads to the door, but he makes like horse hoof noises by pounding on his chest.
Yes, it's good. He's like, and he gallops over and
then he like whinnies through his lips like a horse.
then he smacks himself on the butt as he like rides
Oh my
his
gosh. So he
imaginary
makes a
horse
big
out the
exit.
door.
Yeah, on an imaginary horse. And just then the phone rings and Larry goes to answer it. And he picks up the receiver. That's the part that you listen and talk through
There's
from
a
the
cord
old-timey
that attaches
phones.
it to a base with numbers. You got to push.
And so then we start to hear his side of the conversation that he's having with whoever's on the phone. And we find out that it's Mr. Gorman. Of Gorman's Banquet Hall.
No, you don't say.
And he says, no, I'm sorry. Balky just rode out. Stepped out. And we find out that Mr. Gorman is calling because he wants to ask Balky to cater a second party on Saturday at Gorman's Banquet Hall. Now, Balky's already catering the one for the Texans, right? And so Larry asks who it's for, and we find out it's for the Calorie Counters Club.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
Okay. I guess some kind of food nutrition
diet group.
Yeah. Okay. Calorie Counters Club.
Some kind of Weight Watcher spoof, I guess.
And Larry, just on Balky's behalf, what does he do? He accepts
the job.
Right?
He's like, I think he can handle two parties.
Yeah. So he wants him to expand. He's trying to help him grow. He's trying to be helpful. He takes down the details.
He's trying to be helpful to help Balky avoid the regrets he has.
So he's like, give me the details. And, he's writing it down for Balky. And it's
on a notepad.
On a notepad.
With a pencil.
Which you always had to have by the said
Which you had to keep by the phone. This is before answering machines even. Although there would have been answering machines in 91.
They should have had one.
They didn't have one on this show.
This is how people communicated.
We always had
would write
a notepad
on paper and leave it for other people.
By the phone.
And hope that they saw it. Because you couldn't tell them you left them a note. You wouldn't have to leave a note if you could tell them I left you a note.
Right. You would leave it by the phone.
You're like, okay, where can I put this? Okay, anyway.
So he takes down the notes,
it's kind
which
of funny,
are like low salt, low fat, low calorie.
He's
got
like,
it. And he writes this all down on this notepad, and then he hangs up the receiver, the phone, and he looks very proud of himself, and he props up the notepad right on the front of the phone. So if Balky were to go to the phone to make a call,
it's sitting
he would see it right there with the note facing out.
Fair enough.
And Larry just sort of feels proud, and he's like, he is going to thank me for this.
Look, Larry's being a good cousin.
And
he's trying to be helpful.
Walks away.
Just like I booked you 17 showcases.
Somewhere, because wherever he's going, Balky's not going to see him again until he sees this note first.
That's the thing. He won't have an opportunity to tell Balky,
him
I left you a note
somewhere. Yeah.
But he did put it someplace. He should be able to see it.
Yeah. Now, here's a little Easter egg. In this scene, in the background, you can see a Jimi Hendrix album called Axis Bold as Love.
Wow, that's
on the bookshelf.
I did not expect the cousins to be into psychedelic rock. I'll tell you that much. It's a great album, but what is it? Is it? I feel like that would be more Balky's album. That's a trippy album.
Maybe I could, Larry. I don't know.
I can't. I mean, I see
Larry's
them listening to jazz.
Yeah.
I don't see them listening to the Jimi Hendrix album.
Maybe Balky's classmate
like,
in
Cousin,
college.
you're gonna dig this. You gotta listen to this song. He's playing it backwards. It's on fire. That's a great album, though.
Right. Okay. So back in the scene. So Larry has left him a message, and so the presumption is he's not going to see him again for a while or get to tell him in person. So he's left a note. So then we see Balky come back from the store into the apartment. Larry's gone off somewhere.
And
he's got like his arms full of like brown paper bags of groceries, but they're like spilling out the top. And he like kind of thunders through the door Kramer style, and stuff is like falling.
The phone is ringing. He's trying to get
ringing,
to the phone.
and he's like, and you know, it's always that's kind of a tropey scene, like coming back with lots of groceries and entering the apartment as the phone's ringing. You have to answer it because there's no answering machine.
Yeah,
there's no
running,
like call back. You don't know. There's no caller ID. You don't know who to call back.
Caller ID. He's kicking all the bags of chips over with his legs.
So he's kicking the groceries across as they're falling out, and he makes this big physical comedy display of like crossing through the apartment while like juggling falling groceries and kicking them around.
At one point, he just throws the whole bag of groceries into the living room.
It's like, so funny. It's very cartoony again, and he grabs and he's saying, "Don't hang up! Don't hang up! Don't hang up!" Yelling it at the phone, and he finally gets to the phone and picks it up. And
the phone where the notepad was, which is still there. And
right.
It, like,
and the notepad
down.
Almost falls. He catches it, just sets it on side. He hasn't looked at it yet.
Yeah.
And this is how he answers the phone. Hello, Bartakamus Appleton residence. How may I direct your call? He answers the phone like corporate style.
That's great.
And he's like, oh, yeah, Balky Bartakamus, that's me. Yes, I do cater for Gorman's Banquet Hall. And then we presume that whoever's on the other line is giving him a compliment, and he does that thing that he and Larry often do in person. He's like, oh, go on with you. Oh, I am not the best caterer in Chicago. Oh, no, I'm not. Oh, no, I'm not. And when Larry and him do this, oh, yes, you are. Oh, no, I'm not.
They push each other's face.
They push each other's faces back, and they spring back. So this is super silly, but Balky pushes the phone receiver out of the way as if it's Larry's face, and then brings it back with his own hand. So he's silly. Like, oh, no, I'm not, pushes it away. Oh, no, I'm not, pushes it away again. Really silly, and I don't even know if that made sense to describe it in words, but it was funny. It made me laugh. It's very silly and ridiculous. And then like the person gets annoyed, obviously, because the next thing we hear him say is, okay, maybe I'm in the top 3. So we also find out that people are digging Balky's catering.
They're talking about him. He's getting a lot of leads.
And whoever's on the phone now is offering him another party for Saturday. And we hear him say it's a German party also for Saturday. And Balky's like, oh, the guy's name is Gunther because Balky says his name. Let me tell you, Gunther. He's like, I already have a job for Saturday. I try to never take 2 jobs on the same night. So he's sticking to his thing. Yes. And then there's a beat, and he goes, really? That's what Cousin Larry says. So apparently Gunther is also about hustle culture. And he's like, you have to
You should do more jobs.
Grow your business.
Yeah, that's what he said, Gunther.
And the next bit we hear him say is like, I thought kind of a random line to get one little wordplay joke in. But we hear him go, so he mentions Cousin Larry. He's like, oh, Cousin Larry. Oh, he's my best friend and advisor. He's sort of my tormentor.
Tormentor.
Instead of mentor.
You almost got it right. He just 3 letters in front. It's funny.
So this Gunther on the phone actually does convince Balky to take 2 jobs on the same night because he's saying the same thing that Larry's already told him. Balky starts thinking, okay, maybe I could. And he picks up
that notepad and flips the page and starts to take notes, at which point you hear the audience go, oh, my.
Yeah, because he's just the audience, and we know that he's flipped right past Larry's note, didn't even look at it, and takes the next note.
He's agreed to take 2 jobs.
And he says, Dankeschön, thank you for all the love and pain, which is a Wayne Newton song.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
The lyrics.
Yeah, that's the lyrics. And then he says, let me get something to write on. And then this whole page flipping thing happens.
And the audience is like, whoop.
And Balky's like, okay, shoot. So Balky thinks he's booked himself 2 jobs. Larry thinks he's booked Balky 2 jobs. But
we all know that now there are, in fact, 3 jobs.
Only each of them know about the 1 job.
Yes.
Oh boy.
So then we cut to exterior establishing shot of Gorman's banquet hall and like some superimposed valet cars outside the front.
They look bad.
Yeah, the editing is very 90s. And then we quickly cut to the inside of the kitchen area of this banquet hall. And there are Balky's in the middle, like big island.
In like a chef suit with a chef hat and a
catering
red bow tie.
costume, everything. He's got all the stuff.
He's got this giant piece of meat and a hacksaw.
And he's
Looks
sawing
like ribs
in the middle of the room. He's sawing the ribs apart. First of all, the party is now. Ribs take like hours and hours to make.
Yeah, you got to do those low and slow, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know what he's doing now. The other stuff seemed cooked. You could see pans of like cornbread.
And also, this set of this kitchen is so there's like a middle island, Balky's working counter, and there's cornbread and all this Texas stuff.
And there's three sets of doors.
In the back, there's 3 swinging doors to 3 different banquet halls,
presumably, yes. Yeah. And this is the main kitchen. It's the hub of the whole Gorman's
And Larry's there
business.
too, but Larry's not in a catering costume.
Larry's just wearing an apron and he walks over and he's got a stack of plates and Balky's all worried. He goes, "Oh, cousin, I hope I did the right thing, taking 2 jobs in one night. I hope I'm not breading myself too thin." That's great.
The expression is spreading myself.
Which Brooklyn?
I got it wrong.
Spreading myself
too thin. That's an eyebrow that's an eyebrow pun.
But he does make a cooking pun with the breading.
Spreading myself too thin. That's so funny. I just made up a different.
But even spreading myself
too thin is like peanut butter.
That would
butter
work
or
too as a
something.
cooking pun. Yeah. So all of those except for the threading.
Spreading myself too thin. Threading myself. Dreading myself.
Dreading myself.
Letting myself. Okay. And Larry's like, no, it's fine. We have all the food. We have access to both banquet rooms. Everything's perfect. He's like, look, we're here to help you. I'll help you in the kitchen. Jennifer and Marianne will serve. And just then the girls enter carrying more food. And describe what they're wearing.
Like frilly frock dresses and frilly aprons. And it's cute. I guess they got skirts on.
Yeah. I love how they just skipped over the whole way that they would have convinced these women to do that, help them with this and be like the servers in these dresses.
They were helping him with the campaign last episode.
Yeah, they were. Do they not have their own lives going on?
They've got a very open schedule.
I thought they were busy working women. Anyway.
They're carrying pans of meat and a big bucket, and Marianne's like, this is going to be fun. I was a waitress in high school, but it's been a long time since I've served people food and drinks.
And Jennifer's like, Marianne, you do that every day. You're a stewardess, which flight attendant now.
Yeah. And Marianne just gives us a great, all right. It's so silly. It's so funny.
And then the next little exchange is also kind of like a random joke thrown in there for, I don't know, it doesn't serve much, but it was for the joke, I guess. The girls ask, where's the silverware? And Balky tells them it's in there. It's in the car, and he's like, the forks and knives are in the glove compartment, and the spoons are in the back next to the Garfield stuck on the window. And then he does this like Garfield car sticky thing.
Yeah, he makes a face.
I think we explained this once before.
Well, I think there's a callback to he made a reference in the early season to this Garfield.
When he was buying a car.
When he's buying a car. So he has a car and he's got his own Garfield.
Garfield, the cartoon cat, of course. And it was like a plush toy with suction cups that you would stick to the
we had one. Didn't
windshield.
We have one?
I probably, yeah.
That thing was everywhere. Everybody had those. And the baby on board sign.
It's so weird
was
to
like
think about
thing.
the Garfield thing. Yeah.
Anyways,
so anyway, they threw that in there.
Yes, so the girls leave to get silverware, blah, blah, blah. But Larry's like, Balky, this food for the Texas party smells great. He wants to know what Balky's going to make for the second party. Now,
so what are you making for the second party?
We all know that the second party in Larry's head is different than the second party in Balky's head, but they don't know this yet.
And Balky goes, German food.
And Larry is confused, of course, because he's
like,
booked.
Isn't German food a little rich and heavy for calorie counters?
Yes.
And Balky's like, oh, boy, you got that right. The sauces alone would pack on the pounds. I would never serve German food to calorie counters. And he goes, ha, cherish the thought.
Cherish the thought instead of perish the thought.
The expression is perish the thought, which I actually had to think about for a minute.
It makes sense. What are you going to think about? Perish the thought. Don't think about that. God forbid. It's all the same kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. The expression is perish the thought, which is interesting because That's in English, and I actually had to look that up because I don't hear this expression a lot in English, but I'm quite familiar with the expression "God forbid" in like several other languages that I've lived and worked in. Like in Russian, they say "ne dai bog," like "may God not make that happen," or in Urdu, which is what our family speaks, they say "Khuda na khasta," and it's kind of like astaghfirullah in Arabic, and there's some other expressions as well. But like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like this concept I'm very familiar with in lots of other languages, but never really heard perish the thought that much.
It's obvious.
Yeah. So anyway, okay. So Larry's like, wait, German food, isn't it calories?
We
and
have some
like,
food confusion.
And Larry's like, okay, we're in agreement. And Balky's like, yep. And he's like, so what are you really serving to the second party? And then Balky's like, Wiener Schnitzel, sauerbraten, and goatwurst pate. And Larry's like, isn't that high in calories? And Balky's like, and loaded with cholesterol. And Larry's confused. He's like, why are you serving it to calorie counters? And then Balky gets frustrated. He's like, cousin, I'm not serving it to calorie counters. I'm serving it to Germans. Haven't you been paying attention? And then Larry's like, wait a minute. Let's concentrate. And they turn to face each other in the middle of that kitchen at the island and at the counter. And Larry's like, party number 1 is, and they both say Texans.
And
they
point to the door on the far left.
On the far left. Yeah. And then Larry goes, party number 2 is, and at the same time, Balky says Germans, but Larry says calorie counters.
And he points to the door behind him.
Points to the doors on opposite sides of them.
This is really funny.
And then they look at each other, they repeat it again, and they're like, Germans, calorie counters. And then they switch places Bugs Bunny style, and Balky's like,
Calorie
counters, and Larry's like Germans, and they point to the other doors.
And then they both run to the opposite doors.
Past each other to their respective doors.
It's so funny.
And Balky opens one door and sees the inside of calorie counters and banquet, and Larry opens the other door and sees the Germans in the other banquet room, and they come back and meet in the center, and they look at each other, and they give us a simultaneous, oh my Lord!
Amazing.
And
faces.
we fade out. End of Act 1.
I do love that a little bit.
That was really fun.
Calorie counters. Germans. And they're both saying the opposite
my
thing.
Lord. I really enjoyed that little exchange.
We got a double oh my Lord, and there's going to be some more fun physical comedy coming up. But first, listener, you can join this conversation. Join our Facebook group. I post threads of all the episodes. We're going to record ahead of time so you can comment. You can watch on Freebie, comment, leave your memories, observations, questions. I'll be posting season 7 threads soon as we're getting really close to the end of season 6. Very exciting. Join it. Meet the other listeners of this show. I do like how we get Nicole Stoner's comment about how we got her obsessed with silent walking after last week's episode. And she's like, I can't stop thinking about it. She posts like
I know, I really enjoyed that.
Search.
Thank you.
It's wild. I can't believe you guys didn't hear about it.
I haven't, but I've been telling people about it.
That's probably the funniest thing ever. Silent walking is hilarious.
Silent walking.
Let's silent walk our way over to Act 2, sister.
Funny. All right. We're silent walking to the beginning of Act 2. Actually, we haven't walked anywhere because we're starting off exactly where Act 1 left off.
I'm silent sitting, and not even that.
And Balky is mad at Larry. He says, I hope you're happy. Now we're up the creek without a poodle.
Instead of paddle.
What would you do with a poodle?
Little poodle. And of course, Balky is mad at Larry for booking a party without telling him. And Larry's like, I left you a note.
And Larry has a good point here. He says, I left you a note, and then you said you were catering a second party. I just thought it was the party that I booked for you. How would I know that it's a different? And Balky is still mad. Like, I feel like this isn't realistic because Balky should have just been like, oh, it was a misunderstanding and like, how funny, LOL.
Let's adjust. What are we going to do?
But Balky's like, I didn't see your note. How am I supposed to know you leave me a note? You think I have ESPN?
Yeah, so they've used that joke before, like
ESP,
in the beginning.
Extrasensory perception.
ESPN Sports Network.
But, so... One, I think Balky's unreasonable here because it was just a misunderstanding. The note was clearly like he laid it on top of the phone and he just didn't see it because he was in a rush and had a lot of groceries.
Right.
But he also makes a good point. Yeah. How was he supposed to know that Larry left him a note? But
that's why you leave someone a note.
That's why you leave the note.
But he was distracted at the time, flipped the page. Whose fault is this really? I don't know.
But also, you gotta... if you don't remember living life back in this time,
Yes.
the thing is, it was part of your routine to come in and look for
And
notes
check for
by
notes.
the
See,
phone.
Yes.
Like in
Or like
lieu
on
of
the
an answering
fridge,
machine.
or on the little
You're like,
whiteboard.
oh, is there anything? Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if you had a roommate or a family
Yes.
that you lived with, like we had that. You
Yeah.
come home, you check for, we had an answering machine, but
There was always notes
there
on
were
the table.
notes as
I
well.
remember.
Oh, yeah. Our
Remember?
mom used
Yeah,
to leave
she would
us
leave notes all
really
the
funny
time.
notes,
Yeah.
bilingual
Yeah.
notes. Oh, yeah. I
There was
remember her
always notes on
notes.
the table.
Well
It's
into
kinda
our
funny.
adulthood,
Yeah,
too. She
yeah.
would leave us notes on the kitchen table.
But this is how you had to communicate.
So, like there should have been that. They've been living together for, 5 years now? There should have been that understanding. Look
he was
for the
taking
note.
a new job and he flipped the page and like he didn't bother to turn. I don't know. I can't believe.
So,
it.
a little
Anyways,
hard to believe, but yeah, for the purpose of the story, there you go.
They're in
Anyway,
a pickle. As the girls come back and they're like, "Okay, we're ready," and Balky's like, "Well, everything's ready for 2 parties, but unfortunately, we have 3." And he just calls out Larry. He goes, "Cousin Larry, but booked another party for me without telling me."
and then Jennifer gets mad. She's like, Larry?
The girls are like, "Yeah." She's like, "Larry, you're a horrible person."
But he's just trying to help on Larry's
He was
side.
trying to be helpful.
And Larry's like, don't worry, I have
And then all 3 of them go, "Oh God."
a plan.
We got a triple. Oh God,
I
it's
have,
fantastic.
oh God, a
Yeah.
plan.
All 3 of them know what's coming.
Larry has a plan.
What's
And
his plan?
What's his plan? Larry's plan is to cut down on the portions and serve all 3 parties using food for 2 parties. And Balky's like, we can't give this food to the calorie counters. It wouldn't be good for their diets. And here's where the early
That's where it gets
90s
a little
comes
dated.
out.
Yeah.
Larry goes, okay, whatever. We serve them some food with a little salt and a little fat. Have you seen them? What difference will one meal make?
Oh,
So
boy.
clearly he's alluding to fat people.
Yes.
And
it's a
it
little
was
harsh,
still in
but,
fashion
man.
and okay to make these cheesy fat jokes
Oh yeah.
in 1991.
All through the 90s until like the 2000s.
Yeah,
like really,
until
it didn't
recently,
change,
yeah.
which is kind of crazy. Anyways, watching it now. Yes, it's harsh. It's kind of funny. It's also kind of funny.
Well, but it's not only the fat jokes in the remaining part of this episode. It's a lot of caricatures.
We're getting a lot. Yeah, we're getting a lot of
different groups.
stereotypes.
A lot of
these,
stereotypes, I mean.
Germans and Texans. What
Yeah,
are you gonna?
yeah.
Here we go. What are you gonna expect? In fact, suddenly, from the Texas part of the banquet hall, this dude steps out and he's got the stereotypical
Again,
bolo
like
tie,
costume shop
Yes.
Texas clothes.
Texas cowboy shirt, big head. He's
Cowboy
like,
clothes.
he just first of all, he just walks into the kitchen.
Yeah.
Maybe he's the contact. He's like, Balky, you got a bunch of hungry cowpokes and cowgirls in there just ready to chow down. And then Balky returns back in his Texas accent. He goes, well, Billy Joe Bob, don't you go getting your chaps in a bunch? He's like, the grubs are on their way, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
And Billy Joe Bob is just enthralled and excited.
And he's also like a big dude.
He's
like
a tall dude. The
taller,
Texans are
bigger
very
than them in stature.
Texans are very
yeah,
large.
they cast that whole party. All the
Yes.
men are like
And then
these
you'll
big
see-
dudes.
So all the Texans have a certain look. The Germans have a certain look.
I feel like it's the same
calorie
extras they
counters.
cast for the
Possible.
biker gang and
Oh, yes.
these other big
It is just a lot of the same background guys.
and like the jocks in the early season.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And so Billy Joe Bob's laughing and he thinks he's friendlily punching Balky in the arm, but he punches him so hard that he falls back against Larry,
Who falls back against the girls.
And they get pushed all the way back. And then I love this.
And they correct themselves and,
then
come back.
Yeah, it's actually visually it's great. It's like a wave. They come back.
Yeah.
And then there's this bit they start. He just screams at them, "Yeehaw!" And they're suddenly very
And
scared.
they fall back on their
again.
own.
Yes. Just the guy just screams. So Texans will
Yeehaw.
scream "Yeehaw" at you.
And that startles them, and we see that ripple effect again. It's very pleasing to
It's
watch.
great choreography.
And they correct themselves again. And so then Billy Joe Bob leaves back into the banquet room, and Larry says, "Okay, we'll serve the Texans first." And
Yes,
he
'cause
tells
they're
the girls,
hungry.
"Your hats are right here under the counter." And so
Your
the girls,
costumes. They have
the
costumes.
costumes for the night.
Yeah.
So for Texas, and that's why they're in these frilly dresses, right? Because they work with both costumes.
Yes.
So for Texas, they have these red cowboy hats
Yeah.
with strings under their chins or
Yeah.
whatever, and they put them on. And they wear these red cowboy boots. And Larry and Balky start filling a couple of plates with food. Before we go on into what happens, let's talk about, we talked about Billy Joe Bob, the big guy. Billy Joe Bob was played by a guy named Newell Alexander.
Oh, okay.
Who will have another appearance on Perfect Strangers before the show ends. But he was on a lot of TV, as is common with a lot of the guest cast we talk about. He had been on a lot of television shows: Chips, Battlestar Galactica, Little House on the Prairie, Designing Women, Quantum Leap, Dallas, Murder, She Wrote, Walker, Texas Ranger, one of the Knight Rider shows, Chicago Hope, Charmed, Days of Our Lives, a whole bunch of stuff.
A lot of big 80s
and he's
stuff.
done a lot of voiceover acting and stuff like that. So
okay, I've probably seen him, and I used to watch a lot of those shows.
Yeah, I mean, he's like a big presence, so I'm sure
he's a
he
tall
played
guy.
big characters in all these shows. All right, so they're about to get into this like chaos of a plan to serve 3 parties at the same time.
Small portions, Larry tells Balky, remember, as they load up plates. And then Balky, so he loads up 4 plates, hands them to the girls. So each of them holding 2 plates. And then Balky just starts throwing corn cobs in the air.
Up high.
Yes,
straight
he's
up.
lobbing him straight up. Larry catches one, puts it on one plate. There's 4 plates, but he throws more than 4 corn cobs. He just keeps throwing corn cobs. And then at one point, Larry's just like throwing them on the floor, letting them fall.
He's catching them and putting them back in the pot where Balky's grabbing them from.
And throws them back out.
It's like juggling almost.
And Larry grabs it and goes, stop! So funny. And then the girls take the plate. They take the plates into the Texans. They're going to serve the Germans next.
Yeah.
And then they have a plan for the calorie counters.
Yeah.
They're like, what are we going to serve them?
And Larry's plan is he's like, we'll drain the juice from the sauerkraut and serve it to the calorie counters. We'll tell them it's a new low-cal vegetable cocktail.
Oh, my God.
You know, the funny thing about this is like, it seems so stupid, but now it would become so trendy.
This
and like,
all your
it would be like a TikTok
restaurants.
trend. Yeah. It would be like hot girl juice.
I mean, it's no different than the foam with little edible plants that you have to pay a lot of money for.
Hot girl juice.
Sauerkraut juice as low-cal vegetable cocktail. And Balky's
would totally work today, but it sounded ridiculous then.
Balky like squints. He's like, okay, cousin, we'll try it. He goes, cousin, shortly out of the 347 plans you've had, one should work. This is what we're all hoping.
Does it work? We'll find out. Do we find out? We don't know, but we cut to a little bit later after they've been executing this plan for a while, and Balky and Larry are in a very cheerful mood. They're in the kitchen and they're
going well,
singing together and dancing as they prepare plates of food for the German party. And they're singing about German food, but it's to the tune of the Merry Old Land of Oz from The Wizard of Oz.
But they're singing about the food and what they're about to do. They're like
bratwurst here, goatwurst there, and a schnitzel on the side.
It's really quite funny as they explain we're going to serve the Germans these food.
And it goes on. They do like a whole verse.
Yeah.
And Larry even does like a German accent.
And we even do the Strudel und the Schnaps, he says.
Clever young chaps.
And they do a little choreographed dance.
And they end with
it's so random, but it's fun to watch.
That's how we left the night away for the Cowboys, Germans, calorie counters, Gorman's banquet hall.
They're putting all the names in there. It's actually kind of clever.
Yeah, it was a very cute song. And you know, there's like a choreographed dance that they're doing. We love. We've already established this when the cousins sing and dance. It
foreshadows something that's going to happen later as they're like do-si-doing around each other. Yeah, you know, they're dancing with plates.
That's a good point.
So they're having a good time. Suddenly the girls come in from the Texas's banquet. And
hold on, but it's the Merry Old Land of Oz because we know that Bronson Pinchot is a huge Wizard of Oz fan. So
he's added a lot.
That's kind of a nice thing that he tossed in there. I'm sure he was very excited to write that.
Every Wizard of Oz reference in this show is like from Bronson Pinchot.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they can both sing, right? So it works out perfectly.
Yeah.
The girls come in. Jennifer is pulling Marianne with a rope. She's been lassoed.
Apparently, that's lassoed around her waist.
Apparently, it got crazy out there because she's like, "Oh, we got away just in time."
Yeah, and she's like, "Thanks for saving me," kind of thing. And Larry's like, "Okay, time to feed the Germans." Jennifer and Marianne go back to under the table and they grab instead of the cowboy hat. Now Jennifer takes her cowboy hat off completely, but Marianne just kind of pushes it back
so she's still wearing it.
There's like a string on the bottom, so it's around her neck, and she just puts on the German thing on top. And what's the German thing is like these wigs,
little German hat. And it's got
German hat with these fake
it's yellow
blonde braids down the side to look
I
like
wonder
German.
what they were supposed to do. Were they supposed to take the hat off?
I don't know which one was right.
One of them got it wrong, and they just like whatever.
Yeah.
It
But I
kind of
noticed
fits
it too.
Mary Ann's like character though.
Yeah.
Purposely or not. That's she's like, oh, I'm just gonna push this back.
Yeah.
And you see it behind her. It's kind of funny.
So Larry hands that they put on their braids and their German hats, and Larry hands them plates of German food. And they go in, they make their way to the second set of doors to the German party, and they're like, let's not get separated this time. And they leave, and Balky's actually like kind of pleased.
The cousins are confident at this point.
Yeah, he says, cousin, we are running this kitchen like a well-soiled machine.
Well-soiled.
He means well-oiled
Just added
machine.
one letter. You're so close.
Well-oiled machine.
And then suddenly a woman enters from the calorie counter side of the banquet hall.
Yes.
And she's like...
A woman named Betty.
She's named Betty. And apparently people just love walking into this back of this kitchen. And she's like, excuse me, kind of quietly.
Meekly, yeah.
And they don't hear her. And she walks closer. She's like, excuse me. And again, they don't hear her. And she walks up right between them. She goes, excuse me.
And then they like...
their face.
Then they
both jump.
They
so
jump.
Funny.
And she's okay. How would you describe her and how they've costumed her? This was 1991. Okay, so she's got like this big dress. I mean, she for a 91. What they're trying to show is that she's a bigger woman because she's from the calorie counters, but she's not large. But like she's compared to Jennifer and Marianne, and she's like
she's apparently
has like a jacket with
she's in charge
shoulder pads that's like covering up like. Kind of flowy, larger women clothes kind of thing.
Yeah, so they're trying to establish this is the calorie counters liaison, and she speaks in a very desperate kind of voice.
Yeah, they make.
She's like, we calorie counters are getting quite hungry. She's like, we finished with our tart and tangy tropical nectar.
Oh, no.
She goes, it was very good, but it tasted a lot like sauerkraut juice.
She's on to them.
When do we eat? She asks. So they called it a tart and tangy tropical nectar.
And Larry's like very soon, and he ushers her back through those to her room through the doors. And on her way, she stops and sees the tray of cornbread, and she's like, "Oh!" and picks one up, and Balky slaps her hand and sends the bread straight up in the air, and he catches it. And Larry's like, remember, one of the tricks to losing weight is to eat slowly. And this is like, again, like trigger warning. There's some like early 90s fat shaming coming up. And Betty's like, please hurry. Some of us haven't eaten since lunch, which is a funny line.
I mean, I can relate.
I can relate. I'm like, oh my God, it's been 2 hours since I've eaten. I'm so hungry. Yeah.
But here, it's a dig on overweight people.
Some of us haven't eaten since lunch because you expect her to say, I haven't eaten since yesterday or since morning.
Lunch.
But then the joke comes right at the end, since lunch.
But I can relate to that.
It's so funny.
Really? Yes. Okay, so he's got the calorie counters lady out when the girls come back from the German party, and this time they're followed by an old German man wearing lederhosen and a German hat. He's got a big stein of beer. This must be Gunther,
and he's like very German. He's just like walking around the kitchen saying things like "Wunderschön,
like, my little Freund."
I'm like, what? Balky's like, oh, Gunther seems happy. And he goes, I think he's experiencing Fahrvergnügen. And Gunther just goes, Fahrvergnügen, yeah. And he goes, the party is wunderbar. And the food, wunderbar. Like so freaking
over
German.
Over the top German is great.
Over the top.
I mean, how drunk is he at this point? I bet Germans like this. Come on, I've been to Oktoberfest.
And he goes, we are ready for more food. And then the girls walk in and he looks at them and he goes, und more Frauleins. And then he pinches Jennifer's butt.
Well, we don't explicitly see that, right? But you see Jennifer react. You don't even see his hand really move. She jumps.
You do.
He
does.
Okay.
I mean, like it's implied.
It's implied that he
and Jennifer's like, woo.
She's like, ooh, just.
And then he goes, va, 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 voom. What?
And then he leaves and he's like, auf Wiedersehen. And Larry's just standing there. So
Larry doesn't do anything.
Fiance has just been groped
violated
by this drunk German older man. And he just stands there. And what does he tell them? He goes, okay, go back and serve the Germans.
Take care of the Germans. He's like, all right, Mary and Jennifer, take care of the Germans. What? He sends them back in there after watching it. Oh my gosh.
There's more harassment coming. They both
Can
get
we
it. So,
guess what PS today is going to
So there's harassment incident number 1. There's another one.
Okay, pause.
But they
Yeah.
balance it out. So to their okay, let's go back to Farfignugan.
Farfignugan.
I remember Farfignugan.
What do you remember? It's a reference to?
It was the Volkswagen campaign ad from 1989.
Volkswagen, a German car
and they would
company.
sing it. I forget how they sing it. It was
I don't remember.
But I remember the word Farfignugan.
Farfignugan. Everyone knows Farfignugan.
It was very clever because to this day you say Farfignugan, you think Volkswagen.
So
I think it still works.
I mean, for kids of our generation, there was a time when like Farfignugan was the only German word we knew for a long time from Volkswagen.
I don't think it's a real word either. Did they make it up? I don't know.
In their campaign, it like either meant or implied driving enjoyment. Let's see if it's a real word.
It is the funniest word though. That's why it caught on. Is everybody was going around going Farfignugan. Oh, I love that. Like Saturday Night Live made Farfignugan jokes. It was that big.
Driving pleasure. It is a real word. It translates to driving
so they just
pleasure.
found a German word that's fun to
driving
say.
Enjoyment, driving pleasure. Farfignugan. I don't know. Have you ever driven a Volkswagen?
No.
Is it Farfignugan?
I don't know. But amazing ad campaign. One of the best. That still sticks with.
Frauenparkplatz. That means parking spot for women.
Ausfahrt. It means exit in German on the exit signs everywhere.
Schlagbaum.
It says Ausfahrt, and it always made me laugh. But it just means exit.
We also have, let's talk about Betty. Betty from the calorie counters.
She's very hungry.
She's very hungry. She hasn't eaten since lunch. She's played by an actor named Mary Pat Gleason. And also she's been in a lot of film and television, long career. She was a writer on a soap opera called The Guiding Light.
Oh.
She was on Full House, Mama's Family, Murphy Brown, again, Quantum Leap.
Another
all
Quantum
these people.
Leap alum. Everybody was on
Highway
that
to
show.
Heaven. Well,
Yeah.
Quantum Leap had different casts every time, so had a lot of space for people
it's as popular as like the Love Boat
different story
appearances.
but it was also written to have different people every time, you know. She was on Life Goes On, Who's the Boss, Night Court, Saved by the Bell, Murder, She Wrote, Coach, Friends, Step by Step, ER, Will and Grace, Sex in the City, General Hospital, Desperate Housewives, all this stuff.
What about Gunther?
Gunther also had a long career in television and film.
Grabbing women?
I hope not, but probably.
I'm sure
because these are all among so it's an actor named Alfred Dennis, and among the list I'm looking at was the Cosby Show, the Bill Cosby Show. Is that the Cosby Show?
No.
The Bill Cosby Show. But anyway, so yeah, maybe there was grabbing of women involved. What else he's been on? The Monkees, Batman, I Dream of Jeannie, Get Smart.
Oh, the older shows he was big in that era.
Kojak, Fantasy Island, Cagney and Lacey, Knots Landing, LA Law, The A-Team, The Golden Girls, Who's the Boss, Murphy Brown, Suddenly Susan, which was also Betty was also in Suddenly Susan.
He was on the Gilmore Girls.
Party of a lot of people have been on Gilmore Girls. Wait, who was he on Gilmore Girls? Oh, he was Mr. Fink, a town elder in Stars
that
Hollow.
guy. I don't know.
No, I don't know. No, just a random town elder. And he's been on a lot of Reba, Party 5, Angel Monk, Judging Amy. Anyway.
Gunther gets around.
Gunther and Betty are very known faces at this time. Yeah. So yeah, Larry just watches this guy pinch his fiance's butt and then goes, Marianne, Jennifer, go take care of the Germans. Sends them right back in there. And they give him plates. And as they exit into the German party, we hear Jennifer go, stay away from the guy with the pointed helmet.
Oh, boy.
What?
This guy with the pointed helmet.
And they exit the kitchen into that party. And Larry's still feeling pretty confident. He's like, all we have to do now is serve the calorie counters and then we're good. And he's like, my plan is working beautifully. And then it occurs to Balky that what their big problem is. Except he calls it just one itsy bitsy little problem with Larry's plan. He only has enough plates and silverware for 2 parties.
Uh-oh, that's a big problem.
And they don't have anything to serve the calorie counters. And then he goes, catering is so much easier on Mipos. You just toss the salad and everyone runs under it. Which I thought this was so funny, but I also really stopped and wondered, like, how do you even write this line? It's so silly. Who thought of this?
The imagery is hilarious. Think about that in your head. You just toss the salad, everybody run under it with their mouth open, right? Trying to catch it. That's hilarious.
Somebody must have just had a funny thought about the phrase tossed salad and like had this image and then turned this into this line. Yeah, I love it. And Larry's like, no worries, we can do this. He has another plan. We can handle this. He says, we'll just get the plates back from the Texans because they've had them for a while, wash them and serve the calorie counters.
Okay.
That's going to take time. Those people are hungry already.
Yes.
But Larry's confident that it's going to be easy. And so they go into the Texas party. Everybody in this party is in that costume shop, cowgirl, cowboy outfit.
Yes, obviously Texas.
It's very over the top.
There's like a Western swing band on there. They're not playing yet. They're just standing around, but there's like an upright bass and a guitar.
Yeah, on a
fiddle
stage.
Player. Yeah. And so they enter and they like silently talk to each other and point. They're like, you go there, you go there, I'll get it. So as they split up, Bucky's walking past Billy Joe Bob, and Billy Joe Bob just lassos him with a rope. And he pulls him back. He goes, Bucky, these are some fine victuals you conjured up for us. And Bucky goes, well, thank you. Now, how was the food? Like, not getting the joke.
Larry had to explain that means he loves
like, the food is good. As he untethers Balky, and then Billy Bob gives him another yeehaw, and then just jump back. Jumps. Like, out of nowhere.
And Larry grabs Balky, tells him to focus. Like, get the plates. He's like, all right, the plates. And Larry goes up to, they split again to different tables. Larry goes up to one table and asks a woman, again, dressed as like a cowgirl. He's like, excuse me, are you done with the ribs? And she stands up like very close in his face and she goes, yeah, and I'm ready to start on your buns. And I'm like, oh my God, this is harassment number 2. It's going both ways.
2, yes.
The women are harassing Larry, the men are harassing Jennifer.
Then you see they cut to another table and Balky's in the back,
and she like shoves her pelvis into
it looked like she almost groped him too.
Yeah.
But Balky's in the back. You see the back of him, and he's like pulling on a plate, struggling, trying to get it away from somebody.
Oh my God, like tug of war.
Yeah, and he
style.
lets go, and he runs over to another table and runs into this lady and pushes her over on her table.
Yeah,
and he has to fix her suit.
Just a quick note: the woman who harasses Larry here, her name is Noreen Reardon, and she did a lot of voiceover acting as well. For films like What About Bob, Scream, Elections, South Park, Night at the Museum, Lilo and Stitch, Happy Feet.
Okay.
She's also been on a few TV shows, Full House, Days of Our Lives. So yeah, we see Balky in the back, tug of warring for a plate. And then he gets pushed away from that table and he comes back. He's like bounced around from table to table a little bit. Then he finally ends up at the table, like downstage, I guess, close to the camera. And he looks at a man with his plate and he goes, now you didn't eat all your beans. Don't you want to be a member of the Clean Plate Club? And then the man stands up and again, it's like a big dude. He's even bigger than
Billy Joe Bob. He's gigantic.
Giant white cowboy from Texas. And Billy Joe Bob sees this and runs over to them and warns Balky. He's like, I wouldn't be trying to take food away from Bubba. He'll rip your heart out through your back pocket. And so Balky just picks up the fork and hands it back to Bubba. And he goes, much obliged, Mr. Bubba, sir. And then he tells him, on Meepos, I knew a Bubba who was about your size. Of course, he had hooves.
Where's the Bubba? And then he throws him back to Larry in the middle of the room.
They meet in the middle of this. Like,
and Larry's like, I can't get these plates away from these people. And Balky's like, I guess it's true what they say. You can't separate the Texan from his ribs. Is that a saying? I guess it's a saying.
I guess so. Yeah. I don't know what the saying is supposed to be. Balky's like, but how are we going to serve the calorie counters? We don't have plates. We need the plates. And then Larry's trying to think on his feet. He's like, all right, I guess they just have to wait longer. We'll let the Texans finish eating. Then we'll grab their plates and feed the calorie counters. And he goes, they won't starve to death if they have to wait another few minutes. Well, he thinks it's not a big deal to leave these hungry people hungry. So they go back into the kitchen. And at the same time, Jennifer and Marianne are re-entering from the German party. And they all come to the center and they look toward the calorie counter side of the doors. And inside the kitchen, Betty's back and she's holding the doors shut behind her. They're like swing doors. And behind her, you see like a mob of like basically fat people from the calorie counters party, like trying to storm the kitchen to find food. And they all come in and see this. They're like, oh no. And she goes, if we're not fed immediately, they say they'll take hostages. Oh my God, you're really making fat people
You hear them chant, we want food.
Yeah, we want food.
We want food.
It's terrible.
Okay, so what do? They all run back into the Texas barbecue room. They're like, we've got to find some way to get them away from the tables so we can get their plates. And Bucky's like, cousin, are you thinking what I'm thinking? A game of Twister?
That's not what he's thinking. But Larry has a different idea. He's like, I've got it. And he doesn't even tell them what the idea is. He just sets it into action. He goes into the middle of the room and he goes, all right, everyone, your attention. All right. And they're not listening. And so he goes on stage and grabs the microphone. The musicians are standing around the stage, and he grabs into the microphone and he goes, it's time for a square dance.
Oh boy.
And he starts to like tap his foot and clap his hands to a beat, to a rhythm. And he looks around and the musicians just like stare at him like he's crazy. They don't pick up their instruments. They don't start playing. And Larry starts calling out the dance moves. I don't know what that's called. Is that like a specific role in a square dance? Anyway, the announcer.
No, I don't know the call. Yeah.
He's like, here we go. Time to do-si-do. Time to yippee-yi-yo-ki-yay. Keep them doggies rolling. Everyone's just like looking at him like, what is this man doing? And then he looks at the band. He's like, come on, help me out. And they're like, okay. So they just like shrug and pick up their instruments. And then he goes into square dance mode fully. He's like, time for a dance. If you're able, get off your chairs and leave your table.
So the band just started playing and everybody gets up and starts square dancing. Kind of.
Now, my only knowledge of square dancing is like what they used to make us do in school. And I don't even know if that's a thing in schools anymore.
Was thinking about that. Do you know, listener, in junior high, they thought,
in our day,
for gym class, they figured, hey, what's the best thing to do to prepubescent teens? Who are afraid of the other sex.
Make them hold hands.
Here, hold this girl's hand and dance around and hold her close. How horrifying is that? Who thought this was a good idea? Why were we square dancing in gym class?
I actually thought the dancing part was really fun and like waiting to hear the calls. And like, I always liked dancing. I thought the dancing was fun, but it was like a weird thing. You're like, oh, we have to touch, boys.
Yeah,
and
you're like, hold this other person. Get out of here. But I still remember
and you got paired up randomly with
you couldn't pick who you're doing.
Rotated and you're like,
you're like 11, your hands are sweaty. Like, this is not good for anybody.
Do they still do that? If anyone has kids in school or if we have any younger listeners, like,
no need.
At what point did they stop?
It's a waste of education.
Making square dance a part of PE class.
Square dancing.
I mean, why pickleball? But why square dancing?
At least pickleball.
No, pickleball was different than what it is now. It's trendy again. Pickleball for us was like on these little scooter things.
Yeah. And there's like a little goal and you scooter around. They made us do some silly things for gym class. But yeah, I absolutely thought about I had trauma. I have square dancing trauma, being forced to, But
I thought it was fun, but yeah, it was
the other
weird
thing I related to was I used to be in kind of a Western swing band, just like that. Upright bass player, fiddle player.
That's
guitar.
right. I forgot.
I love that kind of music.
Listeners, my brother is a man of many talents. He played in a Western swing band. And I remember you guys were a lot of fun. You were really good. You should have kept going.
And Larry, to his credit, he's not bad at hurting people and doing the square dance calling.
He's like, grab your girl before it's too late, kick up your heels and leave your plate.
Yes,
and he's like, everything is about getting these people to leave their plate.
He motions to Bucky. He's like, now go get the plates as everybody's dancing.
And he keeps calling out these things that end in like directing them to go further from their plates, and Jennifer and Marianne are like running around collecting plates as he's calling out dance moves.
He gets caught up in the square dance as he's trying to get to the plates. He gets swung around.
Yeah,
it's funny because Jennifer and Marianne are grabbing plates with just all this food on them. It's still full of food as Balky's getting bounced around. And you hear
around. Larry go, Alaman left and swing your dates while the Meepiot collects your plates.
Then Bucky gets to a table and he just starts grabbing plates and tossing
like,
the food on the table.
Like on the floor and on the table.
He's just grabbing. People are grabbing it. He's snatching it away from his hands.
What a mess.
piling up a bunch of plates as the girls have plates with food on them. And so they go into the kitchen.
With a bunch of plates.
What's the status in the kitchen now?
In the kitchen, Betty is still trying to hold back this mob of calorie counters who are about to bust through the door, and they're shouting even louder, "We want food! We want food!" And Betty goes, okay, again, this is a fat joke, but it did make me laugh. He goes, "You better hurry up. They're using Bertha as a battering ram."
Bertha.
Why do they always make the fat person called Bertha?
Big Bertha. They're using a person
Poor
as a
people
battering
named
ram.
Bertha. Bertha's probably was just a regular name at one point. But they're using a fat person named Bertha as a battering ram.
There is a fun little, I don't know if this is on purpose or error, but you can absolutely see it as the girls walk in to the kitchen, and you can see the German party door in the background, and Gunther is just standing there looking out the window as they walk by, and then you literally see him drop down.
Duck down.
Yes, because I don't think he was supposed to be standing there.
I'm not supposed to be in the shot.
He was in the shot, and then it cuts to Betty at the door. But I was like, oh my God, there's somebody
so
back
funny.
there. It's so random.
All right, we cut back to the inside the Texas party, and Larry's still calling this swing dance.
Larry's doing a great job calling the swing dance. Belky has stacks of plates.
And first of all, is swing dancing like
Square
a
dance.
Texas? Is square dancing like a Texas thing specifically?
Absolutely,
it's a country thing.
But it would be huge in Texas.
Okay.
Swing
so he's
dancing
still
is different.
calling, this square dance, and Balky is still gathering plates and trying to get back to the kitchen. And we hear Larry go, "If you're hungry and want another tater, give your plate to Balky. He'll bring it back later." And Balky's grabbing plates.
He has so many plates that they're falling, they're breaking. He tries to go to the kitchen door, at which point the girls are coming out at the same time. And Balky gets hit with the door, drops all the plates, and falls face forward. In the back of the room, there's a cactus, presumably with lots of little prickly things.
Sharp thing. Yeah.
And he runs into the cactus face
and we
first
hear him
and
scream.
At this point, the music stops, and everybody is just now staring at him. And we see the back of him, and then you see him slowly pull out one hand and go, "Ah!" And he pulls out his other hand, he goes, "Ah!" And he pulls out his body.
His face and his body.
He turns around, he heads to the door, and this time he's trying to go in, but Bertha is coming out.
No, Betty.
I mean, Betty, not Betty. Big Bertha was the battering ram.
Yeah.
Betty comes out, knocks him back into the cactus, and this time on his back.
And he screams again.
Yeah, and he gets stuck to the cactus. So there's some cactus humor.
And then he pulls his butt free from the cactus.
He walks over to the girls, and suddenly Betty is at the door again, and all of the calorie counters are
behind
at the door,
her.
And they just bum rush the Texas party. And yes, you see all these large people stream in through the kitchen. They have bum rushed the Texas party.
And then just after them, who else shows up? But it's Gunther and the Germans. And he just goes, "Wunderbar, let's party."
And then all the Germans stream in.
And the band starts the square dance music again. And then everybody's just in the same party.
The Germans are dancing. And this
And Larry calls out, "Calorie counters, grab a German, squeeze him tight and feel him squirm." And more harassment.
And then Balky grabs Marianne and starts dancing. And presumably,
everybody's all dancing together, and the calorie counters are picking up table scraps.
So what do we establish? The Germans just want a party. The calorie counters just want the banquet. The Texans have already eaten, and they're ready to dance also.
Yeah.
And so the solution was he should have just all had them at the same party.
All the parties. Joined the parties.
It's kind of fun chaos at the end, how that all
And we don't see anything else about how that party ends or if people are happy or satisfied or whatever. Presumably, it's implying that everyone just has a good time together. Because we cut to the next scene, which is after everything. It's later at night where they're all in the kitchen. They're cleaning up, washing dishes and stuff.
They're drying the dishes, and they're clearly irritated.
They're all irritated.
No one is saying
Larry's in the middle, and they're all
yes.
kind of on the sides around him. And Larry's just talking, and he's like, "Well, everything turned out all right."
He looks
and
around
they
smiling.
all just side-eye him quietly.
Yeah.
And Larry goes on, he says, "Everybody got fed."
Again,
and
nothing.
Silence.
Nothing.
He goes, "I like the music."
Nothing.
Still nothing. And
he's
he's
talking to him.
He's like, "Didn't you?" And still nothing. And he goes, "Good food, good friends, good fun." Everyone just keeps drying dishes in silence. And he goes, okay, maybe I'm partially to blame for what happened tonight.
And now this stops everyone, and they all just give him the look, like, really?
And then he goes, mostly to blame. and they still give him the really look. He's like, all right, it was totally my fault.
There you go.
So this is funny. This is like an old reporter's trick. If you just say nothing, the people will confess
will
on their
themselves.
own. Yeah.
Yes.
And let people talk.
Yeah.
And so Larry
Silence
just keeps
your
going.
biggest-
He's like, all right, it was totally my fault. I shouldn't have butted into Balky's business. I shouldn't have pushed him before he was ready. And the others stay silent and keep cleaning the dishes. And then Larry kind of like turns back into Larry again. And he goes, but when you get a chance to think about what happened, I think you're going to thank me for what I did tonight.
He has like that smirky Larry smile all of a sudden
like
come out
proud
of
of
nowhere.
himself.
Yeah.
And they still say nothing, but because it's a catering business, they need not one, but 3 of those water seltzer bottle things.
They all have the seltzer bottle.
So Marianne, Jennifer, and Balky. So he says, I think you're going to thank me. He's feeling all proud for what I did tonight. And they each grab a water seltzer bottle and spray him cartoon style, spray Larry from both directions, and roll credits.
Freeze frame, roll credits.
Freeze frame.
Wah, wah, wah.
Why do they have, what are those water seltzer bottles?
I mean, at least in the Gorman's banquet hall, it kind of makes sense because, like, you making drinks and stuff.
Maybe, but
apparently everybody had these seltzer bottles. Listener, did you have this seltzer bottle growing up? Let us know.
What is this?
Before we get into our thoughts, you can also check out some Dance of Joy swag at our TeePublic shop, danceofjoypod.com/shop. Go over there, pick out some things, treat yourself, get something nice, promote the show, advertise for us. It's a great way to support the Dance of Joy podcast.
Okay. Well, what did you think?
I mean, we had a lot of physical comedy. The Three Stooges-esque simple visual gags were great. And yeah, this is it's a trope to just introduce a thing that he's been doing this whole time.
I think the writing was
before.
The writing was good on laugh lines.
Like, there's a little bit of establishment. He was making Bibi Bobkas, and like maybe since then he's been building this catering business.
Maybe, but just never was mentioned since Bibi Bobkas. The writing was good in terms of like laugh lines. Some of them were a bit random and disjointed, but like in terms of the story, of course, this has been the theme. Like, where did this backstory just come from? But I don't know. I thought.
Yeah, what's funny is the first time I watched it, I was like, "That's okay," but then watching it again, I got into it. I thought it was funny.
Fun,
the second time, I was like,
despite the like harassment and fat shaming,
yes,
stereotypes of Germans and Texans.
There's a lot of dated things we can discuss in PS today. I would change it, and there's like plot points that wouldn't happen today.
Right.
Like the whole phone note thing.
Wait, don't say that yet. Okay. Let's save
There's plot points that you'd have to change because it wouldn't happen today. But yeah, it's dated, but this is what you do.
But it did have some good laughs and a song and dance.
It had a song and dance, and it had Balky doing a Texas accent a little too long.
The Texas accent it was too much. But we had some fun guest cast. But as has been the theme lately, some questions, some like suspension of disbelief.
But it does the good thing where it builds to like chaos, and then a resolution.
It heightens.
Yeah, it builds up. So that it was fun, and
the resolution was kind of weak, but
but it always is.
Worked.
You're like, that's all you have to do.
It served its purpose.
And also, if Balky at any point went, there's a big mistake, but we'll clear it up, and told either of them.
And never did he be like, you actually were just trying to help me. So
turns out they should have served the calorie counters first. That's all.
Yes.
Then work their way around the room.
Juice.
Yes, with sauerkraut juice, but they didn't have food or plates
or silverware.
Yeah. What did our listeners think?
All right, let's find out. First up, we have listener cousin Pam Hitchcock, who had a lot of thoughts, which we love. Thank you, Pam Hitchcock. And she's actually divided it up into 3 sections: the good, the bad, and the ugly, which is a nice little theme on this.
Nod to the Western.
To the Texas Western part of this show. So the good, Balky's exit out the door while imitating a horse. Yeah, we enjoyed that too. Balky and Larry sung and danced the Merry Old Land of Oz. Loved it. She got a kick out of the girls' one outfit serves all, like those white frilly dresses that could be both German and Texas. The slapstick silliness of the free-for-all in the dining area.
Great chaos.
She loved Larry's square dance calling.
He was good
and Balky's "he's my tormentor" line. Okay, so this was all fun stuff that we all agreed we liked too. The bad, she writes, the hygiene in that kitchen. So actually, this is interesting. There was quite a discussion in the Facebook group about how Balky and Larry were handling the food with bare hands and not gloves. But it didn't bother me. I didn't even think about that once.
Yeah, a lot of people were saying that. But I would argue, think about all the cooking shows you watch.
They're all with bare hands. Yeah. I mean, chefs. Yeah.
However, if you're running a catering business, maybe you put on some gloves with that amount of food. But if when you're cooking the food, you got to feel the meat. You got to touch it, see if it's done.
But she actually has a few notes about the hygiene in the kitchen. Handling the food with bare hands, raw meat next to cooked food.
That's bad.
Again, didn't bother. Patrons running in and out of the food prep area.
That
that's not good either. She also listed under the bad Balky's cowboy accent. She goes, it sounded amazingly like his Elvis accent.
Yeah.
As good as Bronson Pinchot is with impressions, he dropped the ball on this one.
Yeah, it was fine.
Yeah, it was just overdone. And the ugly, the stereotypes, implying overweight people are consumed with thoughts of food and will plow down anyone in their path to get it. Larry's offensive remark that one meal won't make a difference. Yeah, none of that would get written today, but it was fine then, I guess. And she goes, I'm just going to give the benefit of the doubt to the Germans and cowboys and assume they're play acting. I don't know,
Meaning this was like a dress-up party? Like it was known, come dress up as...
No, I think this is still about stereotypes and the harassment and stuff.
Okay.
Or maybe the stereotypes of the Germans and cowboys
costumes,
themselves. Yeah. Cousin Pam had some random thoughts. We saw Balky cutting ribs, but when did he cook them? Low and slow, Balky, like we said.
Yeah, I don't think they ever got cooked.
And she also took note, something we didn't mention yet. There was like one little stove and one little oven in that kitchen. How do they cook all that food on one stove? Did any of it come pre-cooked? Blah, blah. And then she wonders, wait, before Jennifer and Marianne and Larry were helping out, was Balky just doing this all on his own?
That's what I assumed.
It's a lot of jobs for one person. She writes, I get overwhelmed when family are here and I cook Thanksgiving dinner.
You got to be really organized.
Cousin Pam always gives us her ratings, right? So she wrote, I'm going to split this down to an approximate level and give 6.5 Bibi Babkas. Okay. That's a positive rating. It seems like it should be more, but it just didn't grab me.
That's fair.
You know what? I felt that way too, but like you said, when we watched it a second and third time, so Cousin Pam, I don't know how many times you watched this, but I feel like this one got better the more we watched it.
There's just
the more
times we watched it. There's a lot of silly things in there, right? That just make you laugh and it's completely silly. Where you're like,
the first time you're like fixated on like, what? Catering business? That's so what?
Yeah. Like,
where did this come from?
Where did this happen?
And then, but then you start to see the details. All right, next up we have listener cousin Nicole Stoner, who writes, it bothers me so much that Balky doesn't wear gloves. Well, okay. Another person bothered by no gloves. It didn't bother me. I don't know. I didn't even think about it.
Me either, but
always a joy to hear the cousins sing together.
Yes.
Everything about how that calorie counters woman is portrayed wouldn't fly today. Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. Gunther hitting on the girls wouldn't fly today. Absolutely. The woman hitting on Larry wouldn't fly today. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, why is Larry not upset that Gunther hit on Jennifer?
That's a good question.
Very good question. We asked the same thing.
Just let him get away with it.
She says she did enjoy the cute background detail where Balky and Marianne begin to dance together in the square dance. Yeah, that was cute. And she writes, to me, this episode feels like a weird blend of Just Desserts and Get a Job, two previous episodes.
I like that observation. That's absolutely, I feel like it's, again, they're kind of combining and rehashing and recycling things, and they just combined. They're like, we did those separately. Let's put them together and make Balky cook and have a business.
But in the end, cousin Nicole Stoner didn't enjoy this episode.
Okay.
But someone who did enjoy this episode is listener cousin John Adama.
Oh.
But he can't explain why. He can't explain why he enjoyed the episode, but he did. He says, I think it's because there's no malice, just a bad situation they're stuck in. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
There was it was an honest mistake and they're just all stuck in this situation together and they have to problem solve and get it done. And he writes, that being said, why is everybody so mad at Larry? He honestly was trying to help. That's what I said.
Trying to help.
This episode is an inexplicable diamond in the rough for me. And he gives it an A.
Oh, an A from John. That's great.
Oh, an A. I don't know if I would give it an A, but yeah, it's okay. I'll take the A. And he writes, P.S. While it's obvious the guys are musically inclined, I think I'd limit them to one performance per episode. Balky had two, but Balky and Larry...
Balky had two. Yeah, there was kind of two singing moments in the beginning. And then
Balky and Larry together only had the one, right?
Yeah. That's like two. That's like two songs in one episode. Yeah. That's interesting.
That didn't bother me. I like it.
Got to pad it out.
And
also, there's been several episodes in a row that we start with Balky singing lately, if you think about it. Like they've all. So it's just again this thing where they're just kind of doing the same thing in different pieces and shuffling. I can imagine they have all their note cards
it's a formula.
And they're just like, okay, let's shuffle this time. And like Balky singing opens every episode.
You just like
take something out, we'll put this in.
Yeah. It's a puzzle.
But when he starts singing, I was like, wow, Balky, they start a lot with Balky singing this season. It's like 3-4 episodes.
Maybe whoever was writing for this season just really liked this.
Like, we don't know what you should do. Can you just come up with a song?
Yeah.
And he's like, no problem. Okay, cousin.
And finally, we have listener cousin Whitney Smith.
Oh, where's she going to land on this? This is going to be interesting.
Let's see. She's usually the tiebreaker, too, every other time. So who do we have? We have two, Pam Hitchcock and Nicole Stoner, who didn't like it.
Not enjoy.
John Adama gave it an A.
Did enjoy.
But can't explain why. Whitney Smith was kind of in the middle. So she agrees with Cousin Pam on mostly everything she wrote. And has some other observations. Actually, I missed this. Balky's a lefty. Is Bronson Pinchot a lefty?
I don't know. I'm a lefty.
You're a lefty. Good for you. Lefties. So is Cousin Whitney. Lefties. So we're celebrating you lefties. And she also points out that everyone else is talking about the lack of gloves. She wasn't bothered by it either. And she's like, actually, y'all, remember way back in season 2 when they worked in that diner? They didn't use gloves there.
There is one moment in this episode where Balky's just his hand is laying on the cornbread.
Just like
and he's like smacking the cornbread and it's just sitting on there for a long time.
Gosh,
I was like, the cornbread's going to get a little warm there.
Yeah, so they've been shown around food before several times, is her point, without gloves, and no one.
And then at the end, Balky is like cleaning the spoons by like breathing. You know where you breathe out, and you're like,
yeah, we don't do that anymore.
So he's just spreading germs on the spoon.
Remember how we used to polish? Oh, it's to polish silverware with your breath. Like, whoa, in a post-COVID world,
people would spit on it and polish it off.
Yeah,
it's clean.
Yeah.
You don't do that anymore.
And then Whitney Smith also brings up this. I thought this was a good question. How much time was it in between when Larry booked the calorie counters and Balky booked the Germans? Was there no conversation between them?
Yeah, of course not. They didn't have time.
Period? Or like, was there did they not, there was no other dialogue between them in real life? Or when Balky was preparing any of the food, it didn't come up. You would think Larry would be like, commenting on the dishes or asking how it's going or something like that.
He was coincidentally away on assignment.
They just wrote a note, missed a note, booked another gig, and then met at the banquet hall on the day.
That's exactly what happened.
And then she's also like, okay, Balky's running a catering company and we know that he loves cooking Miposian food. Why is he serving all this other food and not like specifically Miposian?
Actually, I was impressed. I was like, oh, Balky has expanded
his range. He
learned how to cook other things. And probably he's getting no business serving Miposian food.
And probably he's using Miposian ingredients in Texan and German food.
Like, they just, apparently Balky, his chef culinary skills have gotten better.
And he should have made his weight loss soup diet that he put Larry on for the calorie counters. But he didn't know about the calorie counters.
He didn't know until just then. He doesn't have the ingredients. Where are you going to get yak blood at that time of night or whatever goes in there? Yak bile. You need yak bile.
Whitney Smith thought Larry's Texas drawl when he was calling the square dance was way better than Balky's. Nobody liked Balky's Texas drawl here. But she writes, all in all, it was a pretty decent and enjoyable episode, even though the girls were included. Because we know Whitney does not like the episodes.
So she did enjoy.
So we're even 2 and 2. 2 enjoys and 2 didn't enjoy.
I would put myself in did enjoy it after.
Same. So we're 4 enjoy.
And I'm with John. I don't know why. It's just silly fun. And, Anybody getting splashed with water with a seltzer bottle? It's always good.
The seltzer bottle. What is that thing for?
You did that today. People be like, "What is that? Where did you get that from?
What is that weird thing?
Are you running a bar back here?
Water at a 90-degree angle.
Don't be ridiculous was said once, but in a Texas accent. So here it is.
Of course I have. Don't be ridiculous.
What does he say? Don't be ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
And you can see next to that Jimi Hendrix album, you see Dimitri's picture.
Maybe it's Dimitri's album. Maybe Dimitri's the Hendrix
I could see him. I could see him being the...
All right. Now, this is the point we've been referring to. Let's talk about PS Today or Perfect Strangers Today, which is the segment of this show where we discuss, can we remake this episode today? Would it hold up? And I'm going to go with a pretty clear no here, but let's talk about why.
You got to change a lot of things. First of all, the whole plot point of Larry leaving Balky a note on the phone being the only way to communicate. You don't even need that. You can't do that.
You wouldn't have that misunderstanding at all. You couldn't even fabricate that misunderstanding.
Larry would never pick up a phone call for Balky because everybody has their personal phone number, and they would just call Balky.
Everybody has their own number. Their
cell phone. Now,
there's no relaying of messages anymore.
Well, and nobody has landlines that are like a shared phone in a household.
Yeah,
like
to share.
I have a landline here, but nothing's plugged into it.
Right.
So, like, even if you're roommates, you're not answering one phone.
Even if, for example, your cell phone was lying here and you were out of the room and it rang. Even if I, for some reason, answered your phone,
that could happen.
And somebody was like, "Hey, is he around?" And I'd be like, "No," and they'd be like, "Can you tell him this and this?" I'd be like, "Why don't you just send it to him in a text?" Like, and then they would hang up, or they would be like, "No problem, I'll just text him. Just tell him to check his phone." I mean, something like that. But the misunderstanding would be like really hard to manufacture.
You could do where Balky left and he forgets his phone, and Larry knows. Balky forgot his phone.
Sees the text come. That still happens
sees the text
on
come,
TV.
or as he picks it up, it rings and he just answered it, or he sees the text and he's like, "Oh, Balky, he's got to."
Yeah,
he could be like, "Oh, they want him to get," and then he would answer back in text as Balky going, "Sure, I can," and be proud of himself.
And Balky doesn't see that because
how would he not see it?
You wouldn't have a notification because somebody else would text and you would respond to that.
Then you think he'd give him his phone very soon afterwards.
I'm miss texts all the time. I'm like, "Oh, I didn't see that. Now I see it."
Okay, so maybe that part could happen.
Yeah, but it's still kind of unplausible.
Can you still do...
you can't do fat jokes. You can't do harassment, men to women, women to men.
Kind of stereotyped...
you can't do stereotyped Germans or Texans. Well, although I think you could do stereotyped Germans and Texans still, because those are white people that you're stereotyping, and that's still kind of allowed.
Oh, you can get away with that one.
You're punching up. Yeah. You're punching up at Germans and Texans, kind of.
I like having the square dance bit in there, but how do you still do catering business?
Would young viewers know about square? I don't know how people do. People know about square dancing?
I mean, they do the line dancing at the country clubs.
Yeah, they do. I'm sure square dancing is still a thing. But
like,
would like city kids in Chicago still have a frame of reference for square dancing the way we did?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because we had to do it in gym class.
I want to know if they still do that. No, could you still do it? He has a business and Larry overbooks him. Maybe it's a different business.
Yeah. But the conflict points are around the stereotypes.
So you're right. Low PS Today score.
There are still groups like Jenny Craig and Weight Watchers, but you wouldn't write those jokes anymore about that. Or you would stay away from it altogether. You could make it like some culty, like social media trend, or people are doing juice cleanses or something, and they're
it would be like the Weight Watchers group is holding a banquet, right?
Yeah. Or like a keto group, or like a intermittent fasting group, and
you could change it to like a yoga club and you'd
have to do okay, so I would give it like a low.
What would be the next one?
A low B, high C for a PS Today score, because you'd have to do a lot of work to make this exact story work.
But there is times. Like those food trends you could play off of.
But you wouldn't be able diets. To and you could make jokes about them, but not as fat people, like fitnessy people.
The tangy tropical nectar, that would still
That
play.
would totally
That would still play.
be take off on TikTok.
You would just run over to like the plant in the corner, but Bucky, put these leaves on here and just pour it in here and tell them it's foam.
Drink
it's
nothing but pickle juice
We're
for
call
3
it an
days.
emulsion. Just call it an emulsion. They'll be
Blend.
blown away.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean,
A lot of
you
reworking,
could do it, but a lot of reworking. All right. Well,
all right. Well, that's it for this week.
that's for, yeah.
Join us next week when the cousins go duck hunting.
Duck hunting.
Oh my God, that's weird.
Like
the Nintendo game back in the day. Yes. Why? This is. I can't wait to find out why.
We'll find out, but it's
And
going to be
it seems
ducks. There's
totally-
going to be ducks.
Something they haven't done before, I guess. In the meantime, the other way you can support the show, listener, is by buying us a virtual coffee, leaving a little virtual tip in the virtual tip jar. Visit our website or go to danceofjoypod.com/support. There's a link in the description. We appreciate everyone's support. We're getting close to the end of season 6. Your support will help us get to the finish line of 7.5 seasons.
And even if you can't buy us a coffee, you can still support us by hanging around that website and doing a little peruse around the site. Right there on the site, we have links and you can click on places to go to all the different podcast streaming sites where we exist. And you can like us and subscribe to us and leave us a rating or a review. That would help a lot. Those are things that are completely free to do, and we would love your support there. You can also talk to us. Tell us if you square danced in school, in gym class. And the way you can do that is press a little button. There's a little microphone button right on the website, and leave a voice message right there. Tell us about square dancing. Was it awkward for you to touch boys' hands in 5th grade? Or you can send that story to us if you're more literary minded in written form to our email at danceofjoypod@gmail.com. Or you can just show us some love on our social media accounts. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We'd love to connect with you. But Imran, what is the most important thing our listeners should do?
Apparently, always use gloves when doing any kind of food preparation in a catering business. Or don't.
Or
no one
bring
will
an
know.
extra set of plates just in case.
Yes, you want more than you think you're going to need. Or just handle the food with your hands. No one will know. Really, no one will know.
No
You
one
have
will
cooked
know.
away the germs. No, the most important thing is to share the show, listener.
Remind me never to eat at your house.
Look, it's too late.
It's true.
Share the show. Get it out there. Turn your friends on. We'd appreciate it.
Word of mouth goes a long way, and
Yes.
and it's a great way to show support. And we would love you forever and ever for it, and be your best friend, and maybe invite you to our square dance.
Yeah, we'll square dance with you. Alaman left and around we go. I still remember. I don't know what that means, but
You gotta rhyme something. with
do-si
it.
do and what do you know?
do-si do. That's
Yeah.
where you go in a circle with your elbows.
Grab your girl and toss her in the air.
Oh, we didn't do that. in
Make sure
sixth
you
grade.
catch her by the hair.
Okay, I'm going to end the show now. That's our show for today, for this
we
week.
are so happy we do the dance of joy.
Hey, 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 hey,